America. My name is Osei-Frimpong, and now in 2025, I'm going to try to engage in a strategy to kind of court the online left in a more systematic fashion. And to that end, I've invited Zed Jelani. He's going to come on the show on Thursday afternoon, and I think that's going to be kind of a good thing because I think he's a kind of a good guy, an interesting young man. And I don't really watch the Young Turks or TYT and Jimmy Dore and all of them. I have a hard time actually getting through a session of them just because I feel like I understand what they're going to say before they're going to say it. I can anticipate it. And if I ever become so predictable that you can anticipate what I'm going to say before I say it, then I haven't done enough deep work. You should be like, this should be like a little piece of heaven, according to Nicholas Cusa. And if you don't know Nicholas of Cusa, he had an understanding of heaven where it was just like a meal where every bite kept drawing you in, and it was just kind of better and better and better forever. It was like a really good book where like it just kept getting better and better, and it was like a really long series, but it never got repetitive, and you were always a little bit curious about what was going to say. And that was what heaven was like intellectually. It was like a debate where you couldn't really anticipate with appropriate certainty what your opponent was going to say, but you're always very interested. So you kept being interested because it always surprised you, but in a good way every time. And that's what Nicholas of Cusa thought heaven would be like. And that's, depending on who you talk to, what my stream is like. And I think that if you watch one of my streams, or if you watch me streaming for 2 weeks, you'll have different ideas about your role in this world. If not in family, in civil society, or in politics, I try to calibrate the arguments so that they'll actually change you, not necessarily just tell you what you want to hear or what you think you're going to hear. And I think the left needs that for a few different reasons, because I am not sure that this slide of America to the culture right is going to stop just with Donald Trump. I think it goes all the way past Donald Trump, and it's not just that the whole United States becomes Georgia or Florida with DeSantis. It goes past Donald Trump, and I don't think we stop until we hit Nick Fuentes. It goes right past Donald Trump, right past J.D. Vance and DeSantis over in Florida, and we don't stop till we hit Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is inevitable unless you get more better left content, and that is not something a lot of people will say. But in 10 years, you don't want to look back and think, oh, Iremy was right. Nick Fuentes was inevitable because we didn't get our content right. Because one of the problems with the Bernie left that came in 2016 is that, and even the Occupy movement in 2011, is that it had the makings of a good movement, but it was never quite deep enough, right? The movement was never quite really serious about what work means and what jobs mean and what it means to actually secure people a job. So it had its complicated relationship with, for example, not so much unionization, but like borders, right? And what jobs mean and what family means and what politics means, right? So it had its complicated relationship with some of the internal problems of the Democratic Party with respect to not having internal debates and like the accountability measures within the party. It never actually like declared war on that sort of internal fight within the party. It didn't give quite enough content. So you still had 4 years later people being confused about why it's okay that Nancy Pelosi could refused to debate her primary challenger. Like all of these fights could have been fought in 2016 and actually give us a more robust understanding of what democratic procedures mean, right? What democratic policy means. It couldn't have just been the billionaires or the party. It could have been more specific about some of the internal structures within the Democratic Party that make it easily captured by nefarious interests, right? And on the other side, not just politics, but families. The Democrats don't have anything really great to say about families, except like the CTC was pretty good. We should give families money. That's fine. But you have to tie that into like what family means. What family means. And you have to do another show about like what money means. I'm going to do a show probably tomorrow on what money means and how we pay people for things we want them to do. So if you want people to work in civil society a certain way, you have to pay them for their job. If you want people to work in politics a certain way, you have to pay them, which is why we pay politicians, although they don't produce a good for civil society. And if you want people to do families in a certain way, you have to pay them for doing families in the way you want them to do them, as opposed to other ways. So insofar as the state has an interest in how you do your family, how you work your job, and how you do politics, we need to talk about like paying people for work, for all of the work that they do. But that's going to be tomorrow's show. Tonight's show is going to be on my ability to court TYT, Jimmy Dore, and all of these guys and women who I don't really think are particularly. And I'll say this is one of the reasons why I don't really play well with others. Aren't particularly interesting thinkers. But they have a lot of eyeballs on their stations. But I don't think those people learn anything. And I want media which actually teaches arguments and teaches people how to govern in a better way. Like maybe the TYT audience learns over the course of a year and they become deeper thinkers for the exchange, or the Jimmy Dore audience learns, but I'm not really convinced that they learn. Now, for example, the force to vote issue on Medicare for all and playing hardball politics, I don't know if people learned, but they were at least right in articulating that this is what you should do. But I don't think people were brought over in that. And I try to bring people over. And I'm pretty offensive when I do that, so maybe I'm not the best messenger to bring people over, but I actually try to like lure you in with my wit, and then at the end of the session, in a week or so, you're going to be actually different, both in how you think of politics, how you think of your work in civil society, and how you think of your obligations to your family. Because I have a long-term goal of like making sure you enter into a marriage that it doesn't end up with a divorce, making sure that you raise kids who are actually like good people that you don't hate or resent or have to pay for their rehab with. I want you to work well in civil society and like balance power within civil society in an appropriate way. And I want you to have good politics. And you have to see how these things mutually reinforce each other. And if you don't see how they mutually reinforce each other, the whole party the Republicans who actually understand family, who like have something really good to say about civil society, or at least like trenchant to say about civil society, and have a politics. Right now, I worry that the TYT, Jimmy Dore, blank left, Kyle Kulinski, all these guys, while like good folks, are functionally libertarians with better healthcare politics. They don't actually understand the role of government in our lives. But they know that the current government order is bad and it needs to be broken up in a kind of robust way. But they don't really have a politics of, for example, what does real good family policy mean and why? Why? And I'll tell you, we need family policy because our other institutions of self-governance only work if you come from certain sorts of families. If you don't come from a certain sort of family, you'll never be free in civil society. That's how we've organized civil society. And if you don't come from a certain sort of family, with a certain sort of family culture, you'll never be actually politically independent either. And so we need to actually have family policies that I think pay parents for raising their kids in a certain sort of way. For example, and I've said this before, and this will be my hobby horse until you actually get it. I think we need to have kids take a standardized test. It takes tons of standardized tests anyway, every year. And if they pass a standardized test at their grade level, not above, they don't have to be excellent. They just have to be at their grade level. Boom. $10,000 to the parents. $20,000 to parents who have their kids the first day of kindergarten be able to count and do basic phonics. Because there are lots of legitimate ways to be a family in America, but there are only a certain ways of being a family in America that actually will have your child be taken up by other institutions in civil society. Like, school is only organized for certain sorts of families. So we need to incentivize other families who are not that certain sort, but who are nevertheless legitimate, to become that certain sort of family. And in the way we pay people to do what we want them to do, And the way we get people to do what we want them to do in America is we need to pay them. So we need to pay parents to actually raise their children in a certain sort of way. In the same way that the government pays contractors to build bridges in a certain sort of way. Because there are other legitimate ways to do family, but those sorts of legitimate ways to do family won't work in the United States, or won't raise kids who will work in the United States. So we just need to, we have compulsory schooling, but that doesn't matter because it's not really compulsory. Your kids have to learn. It's just show up, and showing up isn't enough in America today. Kids actually have to learn. And so we incentivize parents to make sure that their kids learn at grade level, not above grade level, but just at grade level. And it's tied to a standardized test, not grades, because grades can be gamed in all sorts of ways. But, standardized test for second grade, if you can do second grade work, you could pass that test. It's not that bad. It's and this is something that the left could fight for, because we're actually strengthening families. We're not, and this is where the libertarian left screws up. We're not trying to go around families to help kids. We say that families are actually very important for the child's development, and we need families to be better partners with schools with respect to the child's educational development and the numeracy and their literacy. So if you do that, the government will give your family money, and then you can do whatever you want with with the money, and it'll be a lot of money. Right? So these are the kind of policies that the left could actually champion. And you know what? I've been talking this policy around for the last week or so. Do you know who's actually more solicitous of it? The populist right. The populist right actually gets it. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Now, a lot of these populist right are racist, so they don't think black people are going to pass grade level tests anyway. But that's another discussion. What I'm saying is we need to pay people for doing things we want them to do, not just in civil society, but also politics. That's why we pay politicians. Like we need Olympic athletes. If we want people to be Olympic athletes, they can't be amateurs. We need to pay them for being great Olympic athletes. You qualify for the Olympics, you should get a stipend. And also, if we want you to raise your kid in a certain way, in a certain family culture that will actually work well with the school, then we need to pay you for doing that. Because there are other legitimate ways to raise families, but they don't work in America. Like, not for our American project. We need to admit that we have an American project that sets up institutions to work with certain kinds of kids, and then pay families for actually producing those kinds of kids. And that, though it's not a natural thing, it's an artificial thing. So like you need to do this on purpose, but it's okay. So I did a video on that for, go back if you want more of that issue. I'm just saying that until the left actually thinks about why no-fault divorce, for example, is kind of a problem culturally, and we need policies that clarify what's at stake for children if their parents get divorced. The right is going to win on families, because families are very important. And I'm not saying you ban no-fault divorce. I am saying you stigmatize it. You stigmatize it, because that is like teaching the kid that the world is not going to recognize their need for their life to make sense, right? In order to have agency, you need to be able to make plans in a world that makes sense, and then work towards in those plans in order to realize the aspiration that you had. In a world of no-fault divorce, you're telling the kid that through no fault of anybody else's own, any plans that kids have are going to be arbitrarily tossed aside. Because in one family, one household, they could do one thing, and then another household, you can do another thing. They call it parallel parenting, but really it's not actually parenting, because you're not providing a unified environment for the kid to actually make plans and exercise agency. So you undermine the kid's agency in ways that we don't even talk about. And once we talked about it, people would understand the damage that no-fault divorce does in terms of the child's agency, because you're creating a world where their plans are always will not be respected if they are inconvenienced. Because that's what you're saying when you no-fault divorce somebody. You're saying that when you no-fault divorce somebody, you're telling the kid that I know that you would benefit from a unified family, but it's really inconvenient for me. So although nobody did anything wrong, I am going to ignore what you would benefit for. I'm indifferent to the fact that you would benefit from a unified family because it's really inconvenient for me and it's kind of domestically incompatible. And I know that's the term that we use, domestically incompatible. And I know that myself and your other parent, our ways of doing families are domestically incompatible, why we have to divorce, but you have to worry about making them work out. You have to worry about making it coherent intellectually and practically. We are giving that up. And we would try to work it out together and co-create a unified household, but that's too inconvenient for us. So that's on you. You're on your own because I don't want to have to deal with the other parent, your other parent. That's what no-fault divorce says to children. You thrust them into a world where they have to figure it out on their own because the parents won't create a world for them that actually is regular and coherent and makes sense. They're actually saying that the parents are giving up. Someone said that it's a cross that the parents put down and then the children have to take up, trying to make a unified life. Right? So it's irresponsible, and it's the parent's job to actually co-create an existence for the child that actually makes sense and is coherent, and not just give up on trying to find a compatibility or coherency, and then expect the children to fashion one, because that just turns them into nihilists in a non-obvious way. So the left needs to talk about like why unified families are good. And I wrote a piece on that, and on how the nuclear family is and realization of freedom, not just for the children, but for the parents too. And that should be in the in the description of this video, right? So the left needs to be able to talk about family in a coherent way. It needs to talk about borders in a coherent way. It can't just be this libertarian left with marginally better healthcare politics. It needs to say that, like, actually, families are good, nuclear families are good, and this is why. Borders are good because we should be able to determine what kind of economy we want as a nation. We should have an asylum policy. And so, like, the Mossad just can't parachute in and take whatever they want from here and then go back to Israel. Like, we need actual borders to control the goings on of our nation, the actions in our nations, what's bought and sold and marketed in our nation. And that is, borders are a means to do that, right? And culturally too. Like, not every bit of culture should make it into the United States. Every bit of world culture exposes our kids to things that we don't want to expose them to. Like, we want freedom internally, but to the rest of the world, like, that's not necessarily a great thing. That's not necessarily a great thing. They might be ensconced in really horrible ideas that we don't have an antivirus for, and then the idea is metastasized in an untoward way. So, yeah, we need a government that actually governs and borders that actually make us who we are and allow us to make us who we are, right? So the left needs to talk about borders, I think, in a responsible way that's both politically responsible and responsive to the needs of our families and the needs of our political economy, right? Do you get that from TYT? Do you get that from Jimmy Dore? I'm not really sure. There's just a lot of outrage politics and I don't know, not enough arguments. Not enough good arguments where you actually hash out deep reasons for things. And that's what I want to do here. And if you want to drive more eyeballs to the quality of thought that I'm putting out, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. Send this to your friends. Watch this with your fiance. Watch this with your buddy in your political club, in your college Democrats of America. Maybe you spend 20 minutes watching this and then saying, like, well, he's right about this, or, well, he's wrong about this. That would be probably better use of your college Democrat time than the last meeting or your DSA meeting. I actually think DSA meetings should, like, start with one of my videos and go from there. And I think that would be good for America, because the outrage politics and the reactionary politics where you don't actually bring anything to the fore of meat, like with real meat, except knee-jerk liberalism, is really not great. It's not great. And like, we have real problems with our families and real problems with our borders. And the knee-jerk liberalism is just telling people that just go to the Republican Party because they're actually taking these real problems seriously. Yeah. And I think the rightward slide of American culture is not necessary, and it doesn't end in a great place. It ends with Nick Fuentes. It doesn't end with J.D. Vance. It doesn't end with DeSantis. It just keeps going to Fuentes. And that we need a left that could actually deal with that in substance, because I don't want the entire United States to turn into Florida, or the entire United States to turn into Georgia. But that's where we go if we can't actually have arguments about both family policy and like internal politics of the Democratic Party, or of a third party that's not the Democratic Party, and what a real a party fit for a self-governing nation needs to look like internally. And it doesn't have to, it won't have superdelegates, I'll tell you that. A party fit for a self-governing nation will not have superdelegates. It will have internal debates. And it'll mandate internal debates. If you want to run for this office and someone's primarily challenging you, there needs to be like a media-covered debate that's available on YouTube or whatever, where you guys actually hash out how people govern in their lives. So these are the kinds of issues that a left needs to talk about. Both put forth a conception of the family, put forth a conception of the role of religion in people's lives. We need a richer class debate that understands class isn't just where you are in the production scheme, where there are workers and there are bosses. No, that's actually a kind of an untoward, flat understanding of class, because it doesn't take into account other institutions of freedom. For example, you could be a worker. You could have two workers. One of them has property, owns a house, and the other one's renting. Are they in the same class? No. No, because property is another institution of freedom. So you can't just ignore the fact that property is, one has property and the other one rents. Two different classes. You know what else is an institution of freedom? Families. One comes from a functional family, the other one comes from a dysfunctional family. Are they in the same class? No. Just because they happen to work for the same job? No. They have different families. Families are institutions of freedom, which means they're class markers. So if one comes from a functional or a well-to-do and functional family, and then the other one comes from a dysfunctional family that's broke, or a functional family that's broke, they are of different classes because their families have access to different resources. And it's not really, a lot of people get this confused. It's not really how much money is on your paycheck. It's how much money is a phone call away. And if you have money a phone call away, from people who have an immediate unity with you because they're in your family, and what happens to you and happens to them, and you don't have that, you're not the same kind of people. You don't feel the same kinds of problems in the same sort of way. Right? So we need to understand class is not just where you are in the production scheme. It also means like your access to property, your family, and where I took off a point of departure, your religion. Right? Right? If you're in a tightly churched community, are you in the same class as someone who is not in a tightly churched community? Especially if it's like the Mormons, where they have an entire welfare system. So if you go on bad luck, they have an entire internal welfare system. They're going to have different politics than people who don't have an entire welfare system within their church. Right? Even if you work the same job. So if you just have an understanding of class that doesn't look at your property holdings, that doesn't look at your access to a functional family, that doesn't look at different varieties of church communities, then you're not going to actually understand people's interest in their politics. Because it's not just going to be workers and bosses. There are these other aspects. Other institutions of freedom. And for every institution of freedom, there's going to be class distinctions within that institution of freedom. Right? So This isn't a conversation you hear on TYT, or at least I haven't heard on TYT. This isn't a conversation you hear on Jimmy Dore or anything like that. It's not that they're dumb. It's like but this is a quality of left politics that would have actually, if it were actually promulgated over the last 8 years since 2016, would actually have a more robust left than just billionaires versus the rest of us. Because it's not just billionaires. What I'm saying, if I'm right, that means it's anyone in church with a billionaire, or it's anyone who's of that same flock, right? Or anyone, their children who are not yet billionaires, but they will inherit. Do they have the same interest as you do? No, they don't. They don't, which is one of the reasons why the left confuses who their class enemies are, because we don't think of their class enemies as people who will inherit a lot of money, and we're surprised when they kind of have lukewarm politics, although they work the same job we are and in theory have the same bank account. No, they're looking at an inheritance. So yeah, that's going to affect their class politics. Or we have a quality of feminism that, like, a lot of women think they're just going to marry an earner, and they don't have the same relationship to the labor market as men, right? And so both conservative and liberal women, we need to be honest about their relationship to the labor market insofar as it's not going to be the same. If the tacit assumption culturally, if you want to get laid, is that you're going to be an earner, or and the tacit assumption is that you might live a work optional life. You might live a work optional life. We need to talk about what that means. We need to also talk about, like, the left could actually come up with actually very interesting gender stuff insofar as you look at these major metropolises and college graduates under 30, women are winning. They're making more than men in a lot of these major cities. And what does that mean? Well, it means that maybe big business, late capitalism, corporate society is actually pretty good for women at the mantle level. Maybe not at the crust and maybe not at the core, but there's a whole mantle of women who are eating pretty well in corporate America and who are going to be eating pretty well into the future. So, and that's not going to be an accident. They might be better fit. They might be a better fit. And this is one of the takes that I'll tell you before I cut out that might actually, that gets me into trouble. There's a lot of orders you have to take in corporate America, and women might be better at taking orders better. And there's a lot of creative, patient, hard work that goes into raising children, and men might be better at that creative, patient, hard work of raising children. Like, a lot more of raising children is like teaching them how to drive than teaching them, I don't know, something with like rules and it's okay if they screw up. There's like, I think in the modern world where you could fall very far down and very high up, parenting is very important and family culture is very important, and taking serious things serious is very important in ways where there isn't an instruction book. And I actually think that there's a way in which into the future, fathers are going to be more important than mothers, in a way, more valuable to the family. And women might be more valuable to corporate America than men. It might be, I just won't be surprised if there's a slight shift in family culture such that the way we raise women and the way we raise men, one is actually better suited for civil society, and the other is actually better suited for family, but it's just not the ones you think. The ones you think. And that's a conversation the left could be having, I think, in a very interesting way, but it's not. It's not. So I do wish that someone's saying, get in your cubicle, shut up, type, go home. Yeah, that is a lot of corporate life. And that's not exactly gendered male. That is not exactly gendered male. Also at the extreme, more men are willing to abandon their families for the type of success that corporate America offers. I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure that's true. I think women like chasing the bag too. And I don't think that they're finding out that they're necessarily been acculturated to be suited for the rigors of parenthood. Because, like I said, it's not an accident that if you want someone to teach someone to drive, where like it's not a given. It's very important, and you can't just throw up your hands and the person won't obey you, and the person won't coddle you. Like fathers are good at that kind of stuff, and that's a lot more parenting now in a late modern society. And so I think my anecdotal experience, of course, but my friends who are single dads all have amazing kids, and my single mom's friends' kids, not so much. I'm like, look, man, we can have that conversation. I think there's a reason for that. I think the way we acculturate men in America actually makes them better parents. They're less entitled in some way, but like also more strict in other ways. And the way we enculturate women in America might actually make them better corporate drones, because like they take orders, baby, like better. So like it's not obvious. Late modernity is not obvious. And yeah, so I just think that like it's an interesting conversation we could have. And by the way, the data on single fathers is always going to be a little bit skewed, because single fathers might have access to more money. Plus, they also know, married fathers know that like it behooves them to might find a partner to raise a kid. So like they might just be making better decisions in general. It's also problem solving, strategy, intellectual endurance. I think that's in the family. But like, look, I take family life very seriously as like a very important puzzle. That like other people don't. Like my wife gets it, but a lot of her, like almost all of her friends don't. Like liberal white women are horrible parents, in my estimation. But like liberals are just horrible parents, and we need to actually work that out. I think. And I think B11 says, I don't think women are submissive as you make them out to be. I think they are submissive in the workforce in the way that they aren't at home. And I think that, yeah, I think men get home in a way that like they don't get the workforce. So I think this is complicated. I think it's just more complicated than we expect it to be. I think Christopher Sanders says, women aren't expected to be good at anything. The thing is, insofar as that might be true, I'm not sure that's true, but parenting you actually have to be good at. It's not something that happens naturally. It's an actual skill with stakes. So if you're just expected to just kind of show up and do it, and you think of kids as very expensive pets, you're not going to do it very well, right? And so the gatekeeping that happens within families is something that the left has to actually deal with. And I'm talking about gatekeeping with respect to access to and influence over kids. Is something the left has to deal with, and not just go knee-jerk with the assumption that women are better at it. And I don't go knee-jerk in the other way with the assumption that men are better in corporate America. I'm not really convinced that men are better at corporate America. All right, so the left can actually deal with all of these issues. I just don't see them dealt with like Jimmy Dore TYT. And if they're not dealt with, the right media does it. Crowder will deal with this. The Nick Fuentes of the world will deal with this kind of stuff. And it will not resolve in the, most elegant fashion. Right? I think the left media, the non-dirtbag left media or the center left media, whatever that is too morally comfortable with the idea that they're on the right side of all of these issues. And I think there's a legacy of that goes back to the civil rights movement, where, the progressives, the left was actually just on the correct side of things, and all the way up until like gay marriage. And then after that, it's been kind of a 50-50. The left has been good about some things and wrong about some things. And I think a lot of people don't give arguments. I think a lot of people don't give good arguments because they're just assuming that they're on the right side of it, and they can do it with outrage politics and outrage and yelling and all of that stuff. But no, these things actually need to be worked out. You need to actually see the virtue in a J.D. Vance. When J.D. Vance says that, he doesn't want a United States that's run by childless cat women, like, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. And a left that can't say that, actually, United States run by childless cat women is not particularly great. Is not particularly great, because there's a quality of responsibility that comes with having a child that if you ignore or are not serious about, then you don't understand. Also, it turns out that a lot of women don't know how short their temper is until they have to deal with their own child who hasn't coddled them. Especially attractive women, they just don't understand how short their temper is. They just assume that they're sugar and spice and everything nice, and then they're just bad parents because the child, unlike everything else in the world, isn't, especially solicitous of them and expects them to actually cater the child. And, so it's just not really obvious what it takes to be a good parent, and it's just not natural. And a lot of people are screwing this up. And I think a lot of the qualities that it takes to be a good parent are actually gendered male, especially in late modernity, where there is no floor. So you actually have to raise kids who can, fight and do things and be practical, and not to be practical, actually be productive, and trying isn't enough. Who are these women you're talking about? Well, honestly, one of the reasons why we can't take public school teachers very seriously or hold them accountable is that it's a lot of the women I'm talking about. Someone says, my ex was ridiculously hot, but never did anything wrong in her eyes. Yeah, that's going to be a problem with children. Because children aren't going to treat her like she's ridiculously hot. They're going to treat her like they're her mother, but they're not going to bend over backwards for them. So that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem with her as a parent, right? A woman who is not aware of what she needs to raise an adult male. I don't think women are aware of what they need to raise an adult female. I don't think this is natural. Someone jokes, but having a kid gives you all this knowledge. That is something that a lot of women tell themselves. Having a kid gives you no knowledge. Knowing the world and the conditions of the world is what gives you the knowledge. Right? So none of this is natural. None of this is natural. So it's just not obvious that conventional society has an answer for this. You need women for children and men for adulthood. Actually, this is what B. Levin is saying. You need women for children and men for adulthood. No, that's not true. You need men for children because children are just future adults. It's not as if when you raise a 3-year-old, you're raising that 3-year-old with an eye to the 30-year-old they're going to be, and then backwards engineer what that means. If you treat the 3-year-old like a 3-year-old who's not going to grow up into a 30-year-old, you're actually undermining what it is to be a 3-year-old, right? You treat like you backward engineer the adult you want when you raise the kid. Right. And I think serious cultures take that seriously. As Guillotine says, my mom was a half-assed parent, constantly bringing new boyfriends home. She was a liberal feminist. Yeah, that's a lot of them. That is a lot of them, and there's no real pushback against that. There's no real pushback against that. And we need a pushback against that in terms of what it means to actually create a coherent, authoritative world for the kid where their work and their plans and their world make sense. And you can't just do what you want to when you want to, but you actually have to think through and plan your actions, and that's a function of agency. So yeah, I actually think, I mean, I'm writing my entire dissertation on how no-fault divorce is a form of child abuse. So there's going to be a lot of that. And when you write a dissertation like that, you have to have a lot of footnotes because people don't understand that no-fault divorce is a form of child abuse. Yeah, now splitting because of like domestic incompatibility is actually, it's abusive to the child. Parallel parenting, child abuse. It forces the child to grow up in ways that you've decided were impossible because you as a grown-up couldn't even make it work out with your dad. Now you're and reconcile things with the other parent. And now you're expecting the child to put all of that and make it work while respecting both of your disparate authority. That is a recipe for nihilism or schizophrenia, and you should have thought about that before you married the person you married. But I'm behind on the live, but I think men make better teachers, so overall it makes sense that they're better parents. That's Elena. That's a woman saying that. Yeah, I mean, I think, but I don't think it's biological. I think it's cultural. But I think if the right can talk about families and the left doesn't make any other arguments, then the right will just win. The right will just win. And the whole United States will be like Florida. Some people say it's biological. I think it's cultural. I think we raise women, because I think that other women in other countries get it. Which is one reason why, like, for example, like, you know, these tiger moms are first generation Indian moms. Like, they don't do the same kind of BS and have the same kind of entitlements as American women. So I think it's cultural, especially American liberal women. Like, so I think it's cultural, not biological. And I even think that, like, yeah, it's cultural. Women aren't accountable in America. And, you know, there's actually an interesting racial story about that because we needed the perfect victim in America in order to legitimize policing black men, right? So we needed an idea of womanhood where women were incompetent but still socially useful so that they can be out in society but be incompetent so that they needed to be protected so that we had a reason to then string up whatever black men were around. Right. So there's actually a reason why American women are enculturated into a quality of public facing incompetence. That we don't do. By the way, if you want more about this, Louise Newman's White Women Rights, Michelle Louise Newman's White Women's Rights goes into this. Tommy Curry talks about this in The Man Not. There are other issues. Men cannot teach in co-ed. Actually, like I said, I think men are better teachers of daughters of women than women are, because it's about the culture of teaching and making sure that X gets into there in a way that, like, the person understands, and without expecting the student to be nice to you or to coddle you. But just understanding that, and there's no giving up. You have to just kind of do it, and there's no excuses. Like, that kind of stuff, I think men are good for. So I think that. All right, so The Man Not. So Doc Phyllis said The Man Not is hard, right? The Man Not is hard. Tommy's gonna write another book that kind of goes through the moves more slowly, and the man not's dense. But you could read, you can watch my podcasts, and you'll get a lot of the similar arguments in a way that's actually funnier, right? So with TYT, Jimmy Dore, they create a left that can't talk about family very well. They can't talk about the internal politics of how to fix left politics very well. And they really can't talk about labor very well or money very well. They're just kind of libertarians with better healthcare politics. And that's not going to be enough against a right that can talk about family, that can talk about politics, where you can actually debate. And so the Bernie to Trump pipeline is actually going to go all the way down unless we can, get my views up. By the way, if you appreciate what I'm doing, go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. By the way, if I didn't tell you before, I'm talking with Zed Jelani on Thursday, and I think that should be a fun show because, we're gonna hash it out. We're gonna hash it out. Family for a woman I was treated like a woman. All right, so someone says, my mom raised me and my sister as women. Neither of us were allowed to do anything. Family full of women. I was treated like a woman. The thing is, in my world, women do things. So if you were not allowed to do things, like, what did you learn how to do? Like, my daughters can do things. My daughters can do things. So I don't understand what all of that means. My sister wasn't allowed to do things when she grew up, and that wasn't particularly good for her. And we were raised by a single mom. So what I want to get across before I hang up is that you need a left that actually goes into the arguments about these spheres of life that the TYTs, the Jimmy Dores, and the internet left is scared to deal with. You need a left media that can talk about why families are good, why nuclear families are good, why divorce is bad. Because if you can't talk about that kind of stuff, the right can, and they'll be right enough that they'll beat the liberals. Right? You need a left that can talk about jobs and why unions are good, and not just like in a facile way, why borders are good, why you need borders to have a nation. You need a left that can talk about that, because the libertarian left is going to have a whatever relationship with borders, and the people who actually understand that you need a nation that can control itself in order for it to be sovereign and not be an empire where the United States is Rome, but actually be a sovereign nation among other sovereign nations. You need borders. The people who get that are going to go to the right. Right? And you need a left that can talk about gender and the cultural differences between women and girls and men and the biological differences and the cultural differences without it being like reducing to a quality of racism or a quality of gender essentialism, biological essentialism that is that screws up the needs of our institutions of freedom. And if the left doesn't do that, then the only people who will actually do it in a responsible way is going to be the right, and it's going to be, then you'll just end up with a bunch of eugenists. Right? So the libertarian left that doesn't know how to talk about families, that doesn't know how to talk about organized labor, and doesn't know how to talk about political institutions that govern, that are upheld by certain kinds of families and certain kinds of labor formations, is not going to give enough substance for a real left, for a left that can beat the right. So I say capital can flow anywhere. Why not labor? Because people are not just labor, they're people. You don't just import labor, you're importing a whole person with property rights, and a whole person with political ideas, and a whole person with free speech rights, and a whole person who now has a family of raising whole people who will go to school with my family and then compete and deal with my family. So you're not just importing labor, you're importing people. Jennings Bradford says, my mom had us girls do everything, including cutting the grass with a push lawnmower on an acre of land. Yeah, okay. I don't know what all the things are. Like, my kids don't mow the lawn. Instead, they're state champions in cross country. Like, so I don't know what everything is. And daughters need to learn how to change a tire. I agree. And then Guillotine says, I was basically my mom's slave till I turned 18. Yeah, she ran you off your dad, and then like she needed things that she thought men should do, so that you got drafted to do them. That's not great. That's not great. That's not, I don't think that's particularly great. Let's be real. I mean, your kids are pretty white. No offense. Actually, they are just black excellence. Like real black excellence, which beats white. So let me be clear. One of the reasons I send my kids to like this neighborhood public school, which is, you know, half black and poor and all that stuff, but is because the worst influence on my kids are basic white women, by far. Basic white girls and their basic white mothers. Though by far. And I didn't actually realize this until a little bit too late with my oldest. She was like 4 or 5. I just realized how bad basic white girls and basic white women are. They are by far the worst influence. Like nobody, like the black kids at my kids' schools are a plurality black. The black kids at my schools are not bad influence, and nobody treats them like their poop doesn't stink. Right? Everyone's hard on them, so like they don't get confused about their basicness. But basic white girls get treated very well, so they don't understand how basic they are, and those are the bad influences on your kids. Basic white women are awful, are awful influences, and basic white girls are awful influences. So my kids are actually, like, I go out and I speak this way to my kids. They're allowed to be basic, you're not. And so, yeah, no, my kids identify themselves as black. They're black. They're black with a white mom. Yeah. Like, I don't understand, like biracial is confusing. They're black with a white mom. Like, I don't understand. I'm black, like I'm in this household. When you're never told to shut up, it seeps into your life. Yes! I think so too. This is what Blanco SoCal said. When you're never told to shut up, it seeps into your life. And so, my kids are black with a white mom. My kids are, but like I was a classical musician. I was a soccer player. And so my kids are excellent classical musicians, and they're very good at soccer. So is Crystal Ball basic? You know, it's funny because Crystal's put me on a while just because she thought I was an interesting wit, and she thinks I'm an interesting wit. And I really like Crystal, but the thing is, she actually is basic, but also is self-aware enough to understand that might be a problem, which is why we get along very well. And I've told Crystal like many times, I was like, look, your best book, if you have it in you, is the book about how you went from being a Clinton liberal feminist, whatever, to someone who enjoys my company. That's Crystal Ball's best book. Because if that book gets written and she could actually turn that group of basic white women into like real leftists, then we have an America. Because I think, you know, basic white women are one of the most regressive groups in America who think that they're progressive. Like in 10 years, Anna Kasparian she doesn't stop with where she is right now. In 10 years, she's she's Nick Fuentes. like this idea that, the Bernie to Trump pipeline doesn't just stop at Trump. It goes from Bernie and it goes all the way down unless the left can get it to act together. So same with Asians dressing up and playing European classical music. No, you don't understand. So Carl Karsnak isn't a real classical musician. Anyway, so what? The content of character. You must hate that MLK was a conservative. MLK was yeah. And honestly, I'm not particularly impressed with MLK's kids. So I think that there's yeah. So it's a problem. It's a problem. Music is music. Notes are either flat, sharp, or major, or minor. Yeah, no, classical music is actually very good. Someone says, I quit violin as a young teen because I thought it wasn't black. Boy, do I regret that now. Yeah, my kids don't get to quit anything. and anytime some liberal ignoramus talks to them and says, do they enjoy playing? This is usually some liberal who doesn't know how to do anything and can't play herself. I say that's not the right question. You need to thank my kids for playing beautifully and then keep moving, because you can't do what they do, and they don't need to be talking to you. You're basic, right? Someone asked, is Brianna Joy Gray basic? No. I like her. And every time I go on to her show, I like her even more. I think she's lovely. I think she's a wonderful, I like her mind. I do not agree with her on a lot of things, and we get into it, but Brianna is all right. She's on time. Now, in a well-ordered world, she'd be married with a bunch of kids and still be awesome. But I think America's broken, so she's not. But I thoroughly enjoy Brianna. I thoroughly enjoy Crystal too. But Brianna, I think, is just a wonderful, wonderful human. You get along with Anna than Brianna. I suspect I get along more with Brianna and Anna. I think Anna and I would get along eventually. Then I would mouth off on her, and she would get offended because I have some opinions. Yeah. All right. So yeah, and actually Farrakhan is actually a legit violinist. I heard him play Mendelssohn, the Mendelssohn violin concerto, and he's a classically trained violinist, and no one is blacker than him, and he still plays. Yeah, Farrakhan is a legit. Don't sleep on, and that's not the kind of. It's not something self-taught. No, Farrakhan's a real violinist. Farrakhan's a real violinist. So, Irony, say more about MLK's kids. I think they didn't raise. Yeah, I'm not particularly impressed. All right, at this point, porn stars have better and more honest political takes than TYT. I don't know if that's true. Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother was correct. It was wrong in interesting ways. It was more correct than liberals. I think black people all should read the book. I read it. I reviewed it on this station, the Tiger Mother book. I think Amy Chua's biggest contribution in her life is going to be that book, not anything she does at Yale Law School. And it was wrong in interesting ways. The ways in which the Tiger Mother was wrong was because she accepted other people's standards of success and then organized her life around attaining them, rather than actually legislating and creating a more just world. So there wasn't a quality of autonomy to her reasoning. And so she makes really good company people, but not really good free people, but the means and the structures and all of that, I think they're right. I think she got, I think that's fine. I quit Boy Scouts when I was younger. My mom never let me live that down. Well, if she was a real mom, she wouldn't let you quit. You're too young to actually have that decision yourself. Like I said, I don't let my kids quit. I don't let my kids quit, right? So set rules so kids don't grow up basic, but also teach them that rules often serve those in power and can be broken. Without this, they get stuck in and unable to adapt. Okay, that's true. I'll go with that. And I give reason behind my rules. Everything that we do in this house is organized. Oh, your dad let you quit. Yeah, your dad screwed that up. Everything we do in this house is organized for them to kind of understand what freedom means in a responsible way. It's not success because that's what society wants. No, it's like these are the conditions of freedom. So it's kind of autonomous. And they're learning autonomy, but not the autonomy of kind of doing what I want when I want to. The autonomy of like, this is what it takes to create a world where you can make plans and those plans actually mean something. Because freedom is the ability to make plans and have those plans mean something. And you need a world that will play along. And so you need to create a world that plays along. I wish my dad wouldn't have let me quit guitar and piano and basketball. Yeah, I don't let my kids quit things. They often do want to quit. Not in this household. And, now that they're getting good, they still want to quit sometimes, but they also like their medals. Then they're getting good, and now all of the basic people, as they get older, thank God, as they get older, it's not enough to be cute. As they get older, all the basic people are now starting to be a little bit jealous of them because they could actually do things. I go to college with a bunch of them. Yeah, I learned a lot of this by backwards engineering my college friends. Because I didn't grow up in a very great household, and I kind of lucked my way into college. But my kids grow up in a household that makes sense, and I learned how to organize a household that makes sense by listening to the people I went to college. Listen, and how they grew up, and then realizing that cultural differences matter. Cultural differences matter. And at first I was like, wow, that sounds really harsh and all that. But they were better at a lot of things than I was. And then they made sense. They don't have to worry about being an imposter or imposter syndrome because they could actually do the thing. And that's how I'm training my kids. They don't have to worry about being imposters because they could actually do the thing. They don't have to fake it or appear or display. They could actually do the thing. What have you seen at UGA with regards to spoiled kids and compliant parents? There's a lot of money. Kids grew up with money, and I don't know. Indian food, Chinese food, Mediterranean food options are always good, and they have burgers just having burgers every day sucks. I don't know why that was culture, or is it class? Because in the past, being white and attractive got you far by itself. All right, so now it's culture. Before it was class. Now it's culture. Now I think family culture matters more than any other time in American history. And if you come over to America, or you're in America and you don't have $1 to your name, but you have a good family culture, you could do very well in these United States. You could do very well in these United States. America, black people, through the civil rights movement, we made in America where that kind of works. So if you actually know what you're doing, it wasn't a nation of laws before the civil rights movement, but now it's functioning a nation of laws. So if you know what you're doing as a family member and you're raised in a family that knows what you're doing, you don't actually need that kind of money. You don't need that much money. By the way, if you appreciate what I'm saying, I need you to go to www.funkyacademic.com. Kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. And I'll keep doing what I'm doing. And I just want everyone to have a better family. And I want everyone to understand that America doesn't work for all kinds of family. Just like Okay, America does not work for all kinds of family. It works for very particular kinds of families. And if you want America to work for you, you have to actually understand the particular kind of families that America works for. And then change America to work for more kinds of families, but also understand that the particular kinds of families that America works for can be justified in their own way. So it's not the worst kinds of things that America only works for families that expect their kids to learn how to read and do math, because learning how to read and do math actually helps abstract thinking and all of these other ways and helps you just be a better citizen. Right? So, and then democracy doesn't just work with voting. Our political democracy as a self-governing sovereign nation only works if we organize our parties in certain sorts of ways, with the qualities of like internal checks and media that will actually make sure that the party is representative of the people. And you need a left that talks about these kinds of things, that doesn't just say like healthcare and contraception and trans issues are good. Like, no, you need actual like, this is why family is an institution of freedom and why we need to take families very seriously. This is why political parties are institutions of freedom, but we need to actually take the internal structures of our political parties very seriously. Someone mentioned Steinbeck. Steinbeck's one of my favorite authors. I actually think, I think everyone should read Steinbeck. I think Steinbeck's great. I think Steinbeck is wonderful. And the temporarily embarrassed millionaire quote hits hard. By the way, if you want my favorite Steinbeck book that will help you into politics, In Dubious Battle. It's kind of rough Steinbeck, but it's Yvette's funny. I'll go on and then I'll talk about Yvette. Steinbeck's In Dubious Battle is my favorite Steinbeck book. Then the Wayward Bus is actually a Steinbeck book that people don't read. But like Cannery Row is wonderful. I kind of see myself as, I don't know if I'm Mac or Doc in Cannery Row. Read Cannery Row and you'll see what I'm talking about. Maybe as I grow older, I can see myself as Doc, but maybe I was a Mac. There's another guy who, one of my friends in college was definitely Doc, and I'm more of a Mac. Anyway, Cannery Row's good. And Sweet Thursday, the sequel to Cannery Row is nice. But the book you need to read, if you're going to read Steinbeck, read a novel this year in 2025, In Dubious Battle. It's a wonderful book. It's a wonderful book. Also, if you're going to read a black novel this year, read Sport of the Gods by Paul Laurence Dunbar. It was written 120 years ago. It's relevant today, and Paul Laurence Dunbar is one of those black authors you should read. And it's only about 100 pages. Sport of the Gods, Paul Laurence Dunbar. And it's all about like the stakes of the black family and the pressures of the black families under Jim Crow. So it's actually a wonderful little novel. So now let's talk about Yvette. Yvette was funny because like Yvette joking and I because like she talked to me about how like when she had a family, if she ever had a family, she would raise them up like Von Trapps. They'd be whistling and like, so the quality of discipline I'm talking about with my kids, like Yvette understands, man. She used the words Von Trapps. She'd be like, they'd be whistling and have two whistles and they'd come into a line and that's how she would understand. That's how she wanted her family to be if she ever had kids. So you think I'm hard, Yvette's got severe ideas. By the way, I love Yvette. I think Yvette is a wonderful mind. Yvette Carnell. Yvette Carnell runs Breaking Brown. If you don't know who Yvette is, go watch a few streams of Breaking Brown. She is great. I think she's just a wonderful person. Yvette Carnell, she runs Breaking Brown. I think I can't say enough of good things about her. Her, Brianna Joy Gray, I just think wonderful. I disagree with them on some issues. And look, Yvette's, before she was understanding like the project is organizing black people. I don't think you can organize black people unless you teach black people to fight white people. And so I'm about teaching black people how to fight white people. And I think if there's a distinction between myself and Yvette's understanding of America, it's that. Yvette says like, she did a few years ago. I think she's like, it's kind of moderated before. I don't think you can teach. I don't think you can organize black people in America without teaching them that like the fight is actually you're going to organize them to fight the whites. And so I think the struggle is like teaching black people how to work the body of the whites. You got to work the body through all public institutions, work the body all of the way. You fight where you're at, and you got to take that fight. And you can't run away from that fight. Try to organize black people in a vacuum when white people own everything and like employ everybody, it's just not going to work. Love Yvette, but don't tell me what you do as a parent until that's a reality. Well, no, I think Yvette actually would parent the way she thinks she would. A lot of people didn't think that I would parent the way I thought I would when I told them that way, and then now I do, and they laughed at me then, and now their kids are awful, and my kids, not awful, but obnoxious, and my kids are like wonderful, and they should have just listened to me then. Bree is pretty snooty, and I think sometimes epitomized the let's just talk about healthcare and not culture left. All right, so let me preface this by saying that Brianna Joy Gray is wonderful. And very smart, and 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we would, I can imagine us dating, and then maybe it wouldn't work out because I'd be broke and she'd have dreams of a Negro with a paycheck. But I think she's actually I have a lot of respect for her. But her growing up as a black woman, 100%, four black grandparents, four black grandparents. She's blackity black, ADOS, is not a typical black ADOS life. She is an outlier. And she doesn't understand that she is an outlier in her family, culture. And so the problems she diagnoses about black community and culture and American community and culture, I don't think that they are representative of the severe and monstrous problems with black culture that are both a lack of capital and just the trauma of being targeted for a few hundred years, right? So she is an anomaly. If she wasn't an anomaly, there would be more black Brees at Harvard. Right? She is an anomaly who doesn't understand herself and is an anomaly. And I think if she understood how unique her experience was, and she'll say well, the black people she knew grew up with our professors at Stanford and our professors at blank and blank. Yes, there are a few black people in that class, but if that was actually representative of black America, there would be more of them. So she grew up with a quality of black professionalism that is not indicative of black life. And I'm not saying that there haven't always been black professionals. There have always been black professionals. But she grew up with an elite culture. And doesn't understand that a lot of black people did not grow up with elite culture for reasons. So she's exceptional, but she thinks of herself as a rule because she's also black and lineage black. I'm African. My dad's from Africa. My mom's from South Carolina black. But Mark Lamont Hill. See, Mark Lamont Hill is interesting because he's got kids from he's got baby mamas. I think he's married now, but I don't know. I think Mark Lamont Hill kind of gets it in a way that Bree doesn't, but still, I know they're different. Everyone gets to be their kind of black. They're legit. Mark Lamont Hill and Brianna Joy Gray are black. They get to have their piece and they get to say what's wrong with me, and there's a lot wrong with me, but is what, they both, and we all three have similar opinions on like Palestine, and like I think that like they're fine. Am I judging a man for having a kid with more than one woman? Yes, I am. I don't think that's like something you should do. I don't think that that's something you should do. I don't think you should have like baby mama drama. I think baby mama drama is something that like in a well-ordered world we wouldn't have. We have too much of it because that's like a deficiency in our culture. Yes. Like that's just like Ebony Williams being proud of being a single mom by choice is a deficiency in her culture. As if her child doesn't have right to know her daddy. Like that's ridiculous. All those people who tell black women that they're enough, that is a deficiency in the culture. You are not enough. I'm one of those Negroes who tells people that they're not enough. You are not enough, black woman. Good news is I, as a black man, am not enough for my family either. They need their mother. They ought to know their mother. And our kids need that, like their father and their mother work out a coherent household. So, Bree, I loved her at first, but sometimes she is not strategic at all. Oh no, I think she's smart. Like I with Bree, it's funny because I actually like her more. Every time I interact with her, I'm more like, she's wonderful. Like, yeah, you know, I like her. I think she's great. Don't agree with her on everything, but I would work for her. Like, not even like with her. I would work for her because I think that even if I don't agree with her, I could hash things out with her in a responsible way. Yeah. So like I see parenting is doable. Co-parenting, but no, co-parenting is not doable. Like the idea that you send the twain don't meet. The idea that you send your kid off to someone else's household for a week and you have no authority over what goes on in that household and you can't like rescind it when you don't like what goes on in that household. Like that's ridiculous. That's absurd. And all you know is that like you live a life that's incompatible with the other person's. Like that's great. It's co-parenting is this idea that nobody actually knows what goes on in the kid's like life, home life, except the kid's therapist. That's parents can communicate and work together just like parents living together. No, but like the reason they got divorced is that they can't communicate and work together. like they mostly hate each other's guts and can't, and by the time the lawyers finish getting involved, can't stand each other. So this idea that co-parent it's a cope. It's a liberal cope that we've sold people who fucked up their families. Ooh, I said the F word. But yes, co-parenting is a liberal cope that we've sold people who've screwed up their families. That's something you won't hear at TYT, but is nonetheless true. But you know where you hear it? At the Nick Fuenteses and at the other person, at the other. Like the rights will talk about it in this way, and that's why people who actually care about giving their kids a conceptual coherence will actually talk about it in those terms, but you'll hear about that on the right. You won't hear about it in such strong words on the left, and that's a problem. Two adults that are too selfish so they can't put aside their childish pettiness. That's exactly what no-fault divorce is. You didn't do anything really wrong, but it's just like I can't be inconvenienced to work things out with you, even though our kids probably deserve a coherent household. So I think that's what I'm saying. By the way, if you appreciate me talking like this, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. By the way, Michael Eric Dyson is useless. I want to be the anti-him. I think he's useless. The evidence Mike C. co-parent is a college-educated professional, wonderful adult in a solid marriage. Great telework and dad and mom. Yeah, your children still need to understand that breaking up a family isn't something you do just because, like, for feelings. You should have worked out with them. You should have worked it out with your the parent of your kid. Like, your child deserves a unified household, not the shuttling, not from back and forth, not the not all the nonsense, not the cross that you've put down and decided with, your children thinks they have a great relationship with you, or you like to tell yourself that. And, a lot of co-parents tell themselves all sorts of things about how they didn't screw up their children. But yeah, you fundamentally screwed up your children. Now, we'll see what kind of relationships your children end up with. We'll see what kind of relationships your children end up in. And that's going to be the mark. I'm going to see. I don't know if it's possible that YouTube has crashed out on me. So I'm going to, oh, good. I'm still live. I'm still live. Thank you for holding on. YouTube crashed out. I'm back. What do I think of Bhatia Anga Sargon? Oh, man. Bhatia. I guess I'm just taking, I'm putting it all. Bhatia is like, so she's like fascist awesome. Like, I'd like Bhatia. Bhatia and I have a relationship too. We go back and forth. Like, we talk all the time, and like, I've done some writing for her at Newsweek, and like, I think she's great, except she's like a Zionist fascist, and she's never like, she's like so pro cop. And she always says, like, well, black people are pro-cop too. But not like you are, Bhatia. Black people are pro-cop for different reasons in different ways. Like, so like you can see the interview. I have an interview with Bhatia on my site. I think she's, I mean, I don't hold her in the same esteem I hold Brianna. I don't know if I'd say so like she's so right in so many different ways and so interesting and so like charming. Like, Bhatia is charming in a way that, like, don't underestimate you, because like you won't leave with your watch. But she's a whole fascist and a whole Zionist fascist who is Jew first. and will like, and if it's between you and her people, like, she'll put like she's on the side of her people, and she wants to have her say, but she's like loose. Yeah, if you know what I'm talking about, Bhatia, she's a populist, a right populist. So I have a book. Oh, I do have a book. She calls everything she doesn't like woke. And she has a working class sensibility in her way, but a professional class pedigree. And that kind of comes out, and she's like a whole Zionist, and in a way that's deeply problematic, and a whole fascist. Like, I don't think she's ever met a cop movement that she doesn't like, and I think she's a problem. And I don't think she's a grifter. I think she's like I'd be more susceptible to the charge that she's like an IDF agent. And I think if you're listening to the Bhatia, you should laugh at that, because I might not be 100% right, but she's also like a deep and thoughtful person. Like, it's weird and utterly charming. So Bhatia's fine. FD signifier. All right, so I think FD signifier is a much higher class Roland Martin. Like, he's a smarter company black guy who, like, everyone's gonna love. Insofar he's the black guy of the week, of the year, every season, the whites pick a black guy they adore, and now it's FD signifier, but it's because he's not there. Like, he's not radical enough. He's like, nobody's ever going to change their mind because of something FD signifier says, but they're going to like saying it because he says what people like hearing because that's where he is. I think he's honest, but I'm not going to call him a simp, but he's a male feminist, That is what it is. I think he's honest, and I think he's probably like a good to his kids and all of that stuff. But I'm a little bit more radical in my politics. I think he's a good guy. So by the way, I'm burning a lot of bridges with this, and if you appreciate me becoming so big that I don't have to worry about burning bridges, although I'm not going to really worry about them anyway. Go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and I'll keep doing it. I think it's going to be necessary in these Trump years, especially as we watch the culture go more and more right, as liberals and honestly the left be more and more smug and wrong. You remember in COVID where the liberals were very smug about closing everything down and said everyone else was anti-science? And they were just kind of both strong and wrong. That's going to be the next 4 years if we don't watch out. Where liberals are very smug about being wrong about a host of issues. And while the country just kind of starts realizing that, well, maybe we should have stayed open like Florida and Georgia. And the whole country is going to end up starting to vote like Florida and Georgia if we don't watch out. So who are we talking about now? Thank you. I'm a side note. I have a cousin who looks like him, and I have the urge to test my cousin on topics. So all right. So finally someone says, co-parenting is nonsense. I'm doing it now. It's garbage. That's right. It is garbage. And for all those people who end up doing it right now, well, you owe your kids an apology, and it's garbage. It's best that you admit it now and not like try to, cope, because it's in the culture, and we want to try to at least like stop it from being in the culture. Kidology is definitely the lower mid takes wise. I don't know why. I don't know what this is now. So I think we're done. I mean, how can you say that you're more radical in your politics when you voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016? Did I vote for Hillary Clinton? I said I went for I don't know who I pulled the liver. Like in 2016? I think I voted for the Green. I voted Green in 2016. Because I didn't vote for Trump. And I do not like Hillary Clinton. I think my non-obvious take is that it's possible that in 2008, we would have been better off if Hillary Clinton would have won the primary. Non-obvious take. I'm not sure I've thought all of that through, but I do not like that Negro Barack Obama. So let me be very clear. In 2016, I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, but I'm saying in 2018, and I worked for Barack Obama and like as an intern in his office, under Chance the Rapper's dad, who was Barack Obama's chief of staff. We might have been better off if Hillary Clinton had won the primary in 2008. I'm not sure, but I'm open to that argument, and it might be right. It might be true. Yeah, I think the first black male president actually confused a lot of black people. Well, hopefully we get that confusion out of our system. I'm just salty because I thought Jaime was a leftist, but he's a right populist when you look at his politics. I am a leftist insofar as I believe that government has an effective role in structuring our nations, and but it needs to be upheld by families, and it needs to be upheld by functional families. I And it needs to be upheld by functional families. And I don't think traditional families are great, or values are great. I think are great because they're traditional. I think some of them happen to be good, and then they need to be interrogated before they're thrown out. I think liberalism is a disaster. And the right populist wants to keep tradition for the sake of tradition because that's who we are. The left populist wants to keep the aspects of American institutions that are good and can be legitimized without them being traditional, and throw out what's bad. I think the nuclear family can be legitimized not because it's traditional, but because it's a new arena of freedom. And if you care about that, there's an article in the description of this video that goes into that. But I'm a left Hegelian. Yeah, I'm a left Hegelian. Fuentes is the right Hegelian, and either you end up with me or you end up with Fuentes. And I think in 15 years, we're going to figure out that not enough people went with me until we end up with Fuentes. Well, if my children are mixed, their mom is white. If my children are mixed and not black, it's possible because a lot of black women would have divorced me. So if I married an ADOS woman, or even if I married an immigrant black woman, then I probably would be divorced, and then my children would be black, but like not in a great way. So I don't know. You can call my children mixed. I call them black. Yeah, I'm going out of my way to badmouth any other family model. All right, so so Jonah Romsberg says nuclear family isn't bad, but you're going out of your way to badmouth any other family model. Not very progressive of you. Well, yes, it actually is very progressive of me. I'm just not confused about what progressive means, right? So the problem with like extended family models is that it ends up being clan governance. It's not the government of the family, it's the government of the richest uncle, right? So you don't want clan government. You don't want extended family. Everyone says like, well, we should have extended families and grandparents to do all of that stuff. That's not what you want, right? You don't want your safety mechanism to be your granddad and your babysitting mechanism to be the grandma, because then you're run by granddad and grandma. And what if granddad and grandma are bad influences? A lot of granddad and grandma sneak kids food that they shouldn't eat. Right? That we decide in a family. So if you want free families, you need them to be emancipated from clan governance. You don't want extended family rule, right? So you need a nuclear family, right? So because that way you're not run by the wealthiest uncle or whatever, right? And also, you need a government that acts in a disinterested way as the employer of last resort, so that you don't have to depend on, adults don't have to depend on extended family in that way. All right, that's going to separate me from a right populist, because a right populist say that like, well, extended family can do all the stuff the government says. The left populist will say like, actually, no. And I go over this in the piece in the description of this video. The left populists will say like, no, you don't want families under the thumb of extended families. We need to make sure that the family members can earn money and support their family without having to go to extended family. Right? I understand your anxiety of extended families as a African, but I actually think clan governance gives an opportunity for effective family governance. Yeah, well, you know what? A lot of your, so I think that, a lot of older black people have bad understandings of family. And like that's not, especially the respectability politics crew, who got to be old and alive and got their nut and are living their cushy lives by like not going through the civil rights movement, but by like doing whatever their white boss told them to do. And so like, I don't know. That's just not if you want families to be an institution of freedom, we need to free families. We need free nuclear families. Right? And that way you could deal with other families like in freedom and not and not you could co-find, yeah, you could deal with the other families in freedom. And someone says it takes a village to raise a child. It doesn't take a village to raise a child, or it does. Like, that is usually an end around to get around nuclear families. The village is networked families, networked nuclear families. When people say it takes a village, they're usually trying to undermine the nuclear family. But really, the real village is networked nuclear families. Someone said something that was interesting. Oh yeah, about integrating. I'm actually pro, like we are the American family. We're an American first, and I think black people as the most American people. Like, we make America America. Without the civil rights movement, you don't have a nation of laws. So we are an American family, and I think integration's good. I just don't want black people to integrate on their knees. That was the problem with integration in the 60s and 70s, and how we live with integration right now. We didn't integrate the power. We should have integrated school boards first, and then integrate, like, have black principals of white schools. Like, we needed to integrate power down. Instead, we integrated the most vulnerable people and then put them under white rule. It was a tool of assimilation, right? So I just don't think, I'm a fan of an integrated America. I don't think black people should be forced to integrate on their knees. And that means we need to make black people whole, so that, like, they integrate standing up. Right now, black people are not whole. And so a lot of integration is really assimilation, and I don't want to assimilate to the white populist America. Appealing to authority. Like, I don't know what to tell you, Joseph Rosenberg. All right, ain't no integration in the hood. I am owed reparations. Yes, you are, Chris Sanders. Actually, and I say this, black people, you were owed better parents. You should have had better parents. And you don't think you should have had better parents, but you should have had better parents. You didn't have better parents because your parents were traumatized. They were going through some other, like, a bunch of nonsense, and then their traumatized self got hit with liberalism, and that just screwed up everything. You were owed better parents who knew what they were talking about. And I didn't even know I was owed better parents. I thought my single mom did a fine job until I met, like, in college, people who actually grew up with those better parents. And then I see that my kids outstrip me in everything that matters at the age they are. Like, you haven't even met their parents, Jonah Rosenberg says. See, so Jonah Rosenberg's a liberal that I'm a problem. That's a problem. I can say that you were owed better parents without meeting your parents. And the black people who are honest about themselves, or the black people who've met people who are actually raised right, will understand that, yeah, they were owed better parents. Jonah Rosenberg isn't going to get that. Romsberg is going to get that, but isn't going to get that. But I do. And I think black people actually understand the linear charm of being ADOS, understand that. That the differences in household is monstrous. Like, we don't understand that the differences in household and monstrous. Even my dad admitted it to me. Yeah, that's what Chris Sanders says. Yes, you were owed better play. And it's not for lack of love or trying. It's a lot of it's lack of knowledge and the presence of trauma. You, like black people, are black people free? No. And a lot of it's because of the effect of menticide. Menticide is the term Bobby Wright came up with it to talk about the war on the black mind. But you can call it ethnocide is another term, where they kill your culture, but they leave you intact. I'm going to do a show on, the difference between, like, blacks and Jews, right? Where, like, you had a Holocaust that just killed a large number of Jews, but didn't really destroy the culture. And then you have what happened to black people, where our bodies were intact, fucked up our culture. Like, in profound ways. In ways, like, fundamental, like, deeply distorted, the culture, like down to how we think about families. So we kept our numbers, but like we like it screwed up our like mind. Whereas in the other case, they kept their mind, and with the Jews, it screwed up their numbers. Right? And so, and I've said America's a place where actually, if you have a culture intact, you don't need money. You can make the money. But America, we don't have a culture intact. Because it was all defensive. Like all of our cultural practices were defensive, and then defense thrown straight to liberalism, which is now market culture. Right? So now I'm participating in the market, trying to build your own home culture, trying to teach you how to be better parents. I'm Osei-Frimpong. Could we possibly get some Zoom community chat sometime or something to that effect? Savvy was doing a call-in shows. I missed that. I was on Savvy. Savvy, she's doing something very right. I need to talk to her because her channel has grown. Savvy Sabs has grown and grown and grown and grown. And I don't quite see why, but it has. So and I don't think she's changed her message up much. It's just, and I don't think she gives pablum, but I think she actually stays true to herself, and I don't understand. Army, do you answer questions critical of your opinions? Yeah, I'm trying to do that right here. I'm trying to do that. Yeah, I think Sabby might be a model because she didn't have the biggest channel. She just grew it well without actually changing who she was, and I don't think she sucks up. I think she's just good at and I think she gives content. I don't know if anybody listens to her and then changes her mind at the end. I want the kind of arguments that actually in a month later you'll actually understand that I'm right, and your mind will change. But yeah, so she's I think Sabby Sabs is great. Yeah, I think she's a peach. All right, so what do you have to say? All right, that's it. Not seeing anything interesting in the chat. And I'll talk to you another time. We want to do a money show probably tomorrow. What about Vosh and Kyle K? I don't get the appeal. I kind of get the appeal. I don't get the appeal of Vosh and Kyle Kalinske. I just don't. I think Vosh is talented in some ways. I've tried to listen to some. I don't get the appeal. I think that's part of the libertarian left that kind of I don't know. It's libertarians with better family politics. I think Kyle might be a little bit better than Vosh. I don't know. I don't. Not quite deep enough for me. I think they're probably good guys. But respectfully, family culture can't be legislated. Yes, it can. Good family isn't the result of good public policy. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Public policy destroyed the black family. Public policy can make the black family better. I think that's just lazy. It's lazy cope to say that you can't use public policy to build what public policy broke. Do you think that we would have been better off without electing Barack Obama, none of those black or any of those Middle Eastern wars? Yeah. I'm open to arguments about how we would have been better off not electing Barack Obama. I do not like the Middle Eastern wars. I've never liked them. And the bank bailouts, I think it's just confusing. You want daddy government. Why? So I think government, for example, can pay families because there are a lot of legitimate ways to do families. But America's society only works if you do family in a certain way. So we need to pay families to do America, to work in a way that America's society works. So, for example, I've been saying for the last week, I think that if your kid can do grade level work in accordance with a standardized test that's given at the end of the grade, if your second grade kid can pass a second grade standardized test, not be excellent, but just be proficient, just be able to do the work that we think that second graders should do, the family should get $10,000. $10,000 per kid. If your kid goes into kindergarten with all their phonics, being able to watch this, to look at CH and say ch, and be able to count, $20,000, and then $10,000 above. And so that's the government actually empowering families to do family in a way that America needs you to do family. Because America depends on you doing family in a certain way. It just doesn't tell you that. And there are other legitimate ways to do family. And like other nations need families to do families in a different way that are equally legitimate. But we need to be explicit that we need your family to work in such a way that it's a better partner with schools. And we need you to not expect schools to do the work. And so we need to empower you to be able to negotiate with your boss. And if your boss doesn't give you the raise to get the tutor, then we want to pay you for raising the kind of family that we don't tell you, but we premise America in requiring, right? So that's the government actually empowering families to do what America actually needs. And then I think families, because right now, if you screw up, you have to send your kid to the military. So this is the problem with liberals. I'll tell you, Jordan Rosenberg. Look at Jordan Rosenberg's rebuttal. Why, that one-size-fits-all approach, that's pretty liberal. It's not a one-size, the one size that fits all is that you need to learn how to read and you need basic numeracy. It's already what's installed in our compulsory education system. It's just we're okay if people show up and don't actually learn. And I'm saying no, public education isn't just about people showing up and not actually learning. We need to get serious about making sure the stuff gets into their head. And we need to empower families who are actually in a better position to ensure that it gets into their head, to make sure that it gets into their head so that they can be better partners with schools and make sure that it gets in their head. So the one thing that fits all is a standardized test that makes sure that you can read at grade level. So because if you can't do that, you can't do other things that we need you to do to be a functioning colleague in American politics and to be a functioning member of civil society, right? So we need to empower families to do what families can do. And that could actually make, how does this conversation make sense? Schools are not our schools to educate. Schools are not in our school. I don't know what that means. I think you're under the assumption, and this is a very liberal assumption, that schools can do the educating. It doesn't happen in families. And that the best thing families can do is go out and earn money and then send their kids to the best school. That is not how it works. That is not how it works. It's never been how it works. It's just something that a market society told you because they get money by making sure that you earn in market society, not make sure your kids do well in school, right? So no, you can't just send your kids to institutions. That's like sending your kid to rec league or sending your kid to getting your kid into the most expensive travel basketball team possible, but not working with them at home. They're going to suck that whole time. And then the travel league isn't going to tell you they suck because the travel league wants your money, but your kid's going to suck and then be confused about why they suck. Because you paid for the most expensive team, but you don't work with your kid as a family. And then the kid will actually multiply what they learn at home. That's what schools are. Schools are a multiplier. They can be an effective multiplier, but they're a multiplier. If you don't get anything at home, 0 times 0 equals 0. Homeschooling is the way. No, it's actually not. Homeschooling isn't the way. And I say this, I homeschooled my kids during the pandemic, and I'm not averse to homeschooling necessarily, but I think there's a virtue in actual public schooling. I just think that public schooling works with families that are actually appropriate. And I don't think that every parent has a disposition to actually teach their kids everything, but every parent has the disposition to help their kids in school learn what they're supposed to learn, right? So why not get tutors? Because you can't pay for the problem. You can't, at some point, you have to actually take responsibility for your kids' education and development. Tutors and schools, they're tools, but ultimately the responsibility and the authority comes from the parent. All right, so what? I personally did better in homeschool, but only because I slept better. Yeah, a lot of universities are getting rid of SAT scores. Those SAT scores are going to come back. I think. So paying for school causes parents to take a keen interest as well. Yeah, we in America, if we want people to work a particular way, we pay them to work that way. If there are other legitimate ways to work, we pay them because we want them to work in a particular way. Now, if there are no other legitimate ways to work, then if they don't work the way that they're supposed to, then we put them in jail. But if there are other legitimate ways to work, then we have to pay people to. Okay. Oh, Army, is the Indian spelling bee dominance a result of public policy? No, it can be mitigated by a public policy. The Indian spelling bee dominance is the result of some fascinating aspects of the Indian language that requires a quality of phonetic memory and attentiveness, not necessarily memory, but attentiveness that English doesn't quite. But also, Indian Americans come here with a family intact. They don't need the Brahmin caste Indian Americans do family very well. And American black people have made a quality of America that allows people who do family very well to thrive. Those same people, if they came here in 1940, it wouldn't have worked out so well for them. But now that they come here past 65, it works out very well for them. If you come from an intact culture that already does family well, then America actually works for you. Now, the Indian family, the Brahmin caste Indian family that we meet, was produced by the nation. Was produced by a caste system, was produced by state policy over there. So what American state policy can do is actually create American families that can compete with Indian families, because right now we can't. Now, except like the superior black family who did the Van Zandt 4 years ago, but that was that was not a typical black family. That was what black families could be. But that was not a typical black family. Spelling bee is just memorization. No, it actually isn't. Because you have to actually know what the words mean if you want and know their roots. So I've gained, I'm training my kids for the spelling bee right now, the school bees right now, and I've gained respect for the spelling bee, in a way that I didn't before. Because etymology helps, and understanding words at a deeper level helps. It's not merely rote memorization. And they also another thing about Indian culture and spelling bee culture is that they have intramural bees that are just for Indians. There are two minor league spelling bee associations that are just for Indians, that are exclusively. There's a minor league circuit. So by the time they get to Scripps, they've already been battered by the AAU of bees in a way that American kids who just kind of pick it up haven't been. So, yeah. So Latin, Greek, and German. Americans pretty much, I can read Latin, Greek, and German. And it wasn't until I could read Latin, Greek, and German until I actually understood English. That might just be me. Heidegger is funny because he said, if you can't read German, you don't really understand English. It's impossible to think in English because it's such a mishmash of language. So yeah, I didn't really actually learn English because it is kind of a mishmash of language until I learned Latin, Greek, and German. And then English just made sense. And I grew up in California, right? So That's just what it is. All right. U.S. spelling bee is a mess. Is a mess of history. Yeah, it kind of is. But it also leads to a kind of sloppy thinking, and that's a problem if you don't understand the roots of the words. Views on Candace Owens. I'd be interested. I'd like to talk with her. I think she's pretty. I'd like to talk with her. I don't know about Candace Owens. I think she's, I think she was a grifter. I think she's smart. I think she's wonderfully intelligent. I suspect we disagree on a lot of things, but I think she's good. If there is a policy of getting 10K black families, children who are proficient in reading, writing, and arithmetic, I could see black families still somewhat getting the shaft, especially paperwork involved. Well, there wouldn't be paperwork involved. You'd go and the school would set up. You just set up, go, take the test. Thoughts on the academic bowl? I didn't do it. I wish I did. I came from a deficient culture. I thought on I didn't do math academy Olympiad. I didn't do the academic bowl. I should have done it. I think there was one in my region. My mom should have put me in it. I did Model United Nation by mistake. Because I talked to a Jewish friend and he was doing it and he told me that I should do it, so I did it. Army's up late feeding the streets. Yeah, well, the streets are hungry. And this is my way of giving back to the people. And you 234 people. Yeah, and I bet you people in math, I wonder how many people in Math Olympiad come from are co-parented or come from single family homes or people who do well. I suspect not too many, right? So I think we underestimate what intellectual coherence in the household means. All right, so you can set up basic math. People can do a lot of things if they understand that that's what they can and should do. But I think a lot of things, I came from a single family home and did very well, but that was very much the exception. Yeah. I came from a single family home too. And a pretty smart guy, but that was an exception. I don't want black people to do well exceptionally. I want black people to do well as a matter of product. I tell this story, of my Orthodox Jew professor, was talking about how we were both lamenting how, what it means to raise kids and how much of it's kind of a job and you have to think about it. And he lamented that, we were talking about our kids. We both have 3 kids, and he lamented that, my latest kid, he never finished his education. And it's always kind of hit me hard. And we were both kind of thinking about that. I didn't ask too many questions about it because we were talking. And he was like, yeah, he just never finished his education. It was my one kid who never finished his education. And so I thought that's too bad. He dropped out of high school. He dropped out of college. He didn't finish his education. Because usually when people tell me that they don't finish their education, that's what they mean. Dropped out of high school, dropped out of college, they drop out. Come to find out a few months later that by not finishing his education, his other son the fail son, was ABD, all but dissertation. He'd gotten a math degree from University of Chicago. He got 2 degrees, but he didn't finish his education as opposed to his other sons who all went through their PhD. What I mean to say when I say this question is that you can care about education, but if you don't know that that's what it means to care about education, you're going to lose to the person who doesn't care about education that much, but knows what it means to care about it even a little bit, right? So black people who care about education for their kids, who don't even understand, but don't understand what actually care about education means, are going to lose to other people who knows what caring about education means without even caring about, like, without even caring as much. And so someone mentioned Mr. Beast in the chat, and like this is actually a relevant little anecdote. I saw a clip of him talking about, like, look, man, I could start a channel. I could start a channel with faceless channel and have in 2 months 2 million subscribers. And it's not because, and it's all just knowledge. It's just that I just know how to do this. I learned how to do this. He learned how to do YouTube. And so he could start, it's just knowledge. And so what I'm trying to teach you is to learn how to do family. Because a lot of it's just knowledge. Doesn't matter how much you care. If you don't have the knowledge to do it, you're not going to do it well. Like, I learned from calculus from good lectures on YouTube and had to find them confused in theory. Okay, I don't know what that means. But I just say, like, a lot of this is knowledge that we tell people is not knowledge or that it's natural or whatever. But a lot of it is knowledge. How to do family, how to do politics. And I try to get the knowledge out to you so that you aren't confused about how you're not winning. A lot of it's knowledge. It's actually a contest in Nigeria that pays kids $1 million Nigerian bucks for winning math contest. So I don't want to, like, for my scheme to paying, I want to be very clear because everyone's going to always make it about excellence and winning. I want to pay people for being proficient, for structuring their family so that their kids are proficient in reading, writing, and arithmetic. And reading and arithmetic. Writing can come later. I just want to pay for proficiency because there's a lot of ways to do family in a legitimate way which will not produce proficient kids. So I don't want to punish kids for not producing proficient kids who are proficient in reading and writing. But I want to actually incentivize those families to actually do it this way instead, because I think that's how a good market society should work. Yep, everyone should be able to read, write. Like, I just want everyone to do at grade level. Black people are not doing work at grade level. Anybody who tells you that they are is lying to you. Just because anybody who tells you that black kids are doing work at grade level because their particular kid is doing well at grade level doesn't know how to abstract, like, from themselves to the entire community. Because as a community, we're not doing well. And it's not for lack of love, and it's not IQ or genetics or anything like that. It's because of, like, knowledge of what doing family right looks like. And because everybody lies to us. Everybody lies to black people all the time. So everybody lies to black people all the time, and now they have to run families knowing that everybody has lied to them all the time. And so, like, you got, like, markets and a community and all of that stuff. Yeah, but this integrals are very hard at first. Yeah, no, the chain rule is real. Instantaneous slope. All right, so I don't think it's right to use market mechanisms to bolster the pillars of family. I do think it's right to use market mechanisms. Well, then why do we pay politicians? Because we want them to not we want politicians to not, like, use their political office to get money. Now, in a nation where everything requires money, we need to pay people to do things the way we want them to do things. What does the Dole psychology? What does the Dole? I mean, that just tells you everything about the menticide. Like, yeah. All right. What's? I stumbled into a black whiny corner on the internet. I don't know what that means. All right. So, any plans for everyone to work out too? Any plans for everyone never work out too well? Well, democracy is a plan for everyone. Yeah, I propose paying, and it's very important. I propose paying not the children, the family. Now, there's some research out there by Roland Fryer about how if you pay children a little bit of money, they do better in school. I don't want to pay children a little money. I want to pay families a lot of money. I think that's very important. And anyone who gets that confused is intentionally confusing. I want to pay families a lot of money for having proficient kids who are proficient in school. There's already a family in Brazil program in Brazil called Bolsa Familia. popular across the spectrum that pays families for having their kids attend school and get vaccinated. The kid does the work, the parent gets the money. What? The kid doesn't do the work in a vacuum. I don't think you can abstract kids from their parents. I think people who think you can abstract kids from their parents haven't seen the variety of households that exist. Many parents would blow that money ASAP. Yeah, but they only get the money if the kid does the work. So that's if they train the kid, do the well. Yes, the good kid can do well despite having bad parents. This isn't about most kids do what they do up to the quality of their parents. And actually, this among liberals, there's a downslide. Like households exist. I don't know. You can't abstract kids from their parents, and I think that's a liberal. That's a liberal canard, thinking that you can abstract kids from their parents. Good parents still win, and kids with shit parents suffer. Yeah, but I think there was a large mantle, a huge, non-negligible mantle of parents who don't want to be shit, but don't know how to be better and have slightly skewed priorities. So they'll take the extra shift at work rather than work on reading with their kids. It's not obvious that that's shit parenting, especially in a market society that tells you that making money is good. Right? So this program is aimed for them. Haffican here. My buddy upset ages ago by you because you said that California is poorly governed for black folks and he will not let it go. Where's the data? He keeps asking. California is hemorrhaging black people. I grew up in Baldwin Hills. Is Baldwin Hills still black? Now, people think of Baldwin Hills as being rich LA. My mom was a single nurse. So she bought the house in the 70s for $40,000, and not cash, it's on a mortgage. So I don't even know if Baldwin Hills is black. California's been hemorrhaging black people. The homeless population in California, that's all just black guys. 55%, I think. It's just black male. So yeah. Instead of letting their kids play sports to be entertained all day, they'll make them study for the money. Yeah, and I think that's good. I think that's fine. It'll give content to what good parenting looks like, or at least content to what the kind of parenting that America rewards looks like. Because this is the kind of parenting America rewards. We just don't tell people about it. We just don't tell them that. What it means to prepare children for success in life because they're your children. What I'm saying is a lot of people don't know what it looks like to prepare people for success in life, so that they think that preparing their children for success in life means working an extra shift to make money to send your kid to a fancy school. And this program will say, actually, what it means to prepare kids for success in life is sitting with their kid and making sure that they know at a first grade work, at a first grade level. Right? So it's not as if I'm paying parents to be parents. I'm paying parents to be parents in a particular way rather than being parents in this other particular way. Because the other particular way is actually, in a way, legitimate. It's just a canard. It's a red herring to success in America. The parents do the work of making sure the kid is prepared to do the work. The kid takes the test, but look, if you meet any of my kids and they do well on a test, you'll think, well, the kid did well on the test. No, what you're seeing is the kid being the avatar of a functional family. My kids do well on all of these tests because we have a good family that prioritize during the test. I actually don't think homeschooling works necessarily because I know a lot of homeschoolers who homeschool without the appropriate direction. They don't prioritize the right things, so their kids end up actually like illiterate, and like they do homeschool because they don't trust the schools, but they also don't have the right curriculum and they don't have the right disposition, and so what is the appropriate direction? If you have to ask that question, then you don't know. If you have to ask that question, you should not be homeschooling or talking about expecting everyone to homeschool. Homeschooling works for the people who know, but like also public schooling works for the people who know. So the common factor is the people who know, right? I gave a it's like homeschooling only works as well as like thoughtful and rigorous as your parents. And this assumption, and none of this is natural. Good homeschoolers are good at it because they're like actually thoughtful people in other ways. And then bad homeschoolers are negligent, except the state doesn't find out for 10 years because like no one realizes that the kid can't like do other things that would like are basic. Right? So homeschool works for kids of the right kinds of family, but also public schools work for kids of the right kind of family. So do you think that woke colleges are destroying the family? I do. I don't know if woke colleges, I don't think they're particularly good for the family, but I don't think feminism's great for family. And I think, traditional families are not particularly great for family either. So it's confusing. I had to teach myself. My parents barely spoke English. Lol. Yeah. That's a lot of immigrants' stories. Preparing kids for jobs that haven't been invented. Yeah. Most parents don't care, so their kids don't care. Why should they? So I think most parents actually care. They're just bad at caring. I mean, you have explored education systems in other countries. A little bit. Why does education make white people socially inept? There are a lot of presuppositions about what education means, what they learn in their families versus what they learn in schools. Traditional families aren't good for families. Yeah, traditional families teach kids how to be like racist and hypergamous and like all like have fucking screwed up gender dynamics and like I said, I told you might not have been here at the beginning, but I was telling people before that basic white women, conventional traditional white women are by far, and basic conventional white girls are by far the worst like examples for my kids. Like conventional white people are like bad at family. Just in ways that like traditional American families are bad at families. Just like they have enough money to kind of paper over that, but they're not particularly great. Okay, what about white men? Conventional white men? Yeah, I don't think they're great either. What's the problem? What is screwed up gender dynamics? A lot of people don't understand how much spousal rape goes on in the suburbs, in the white suburbs. I don't know. I'm 100% for holding women and feminism accountable. Why the emphasis on women? Oh, because I think women are the bottleneck to better progressive politics. Anytime there's a good kind of progressive campaign, some brand of feminism just kind of magics out of existence to take it out. And I think that's by design. So I think we've naturalized enough of like moral and political superiority of women while giving them all sorts of offices without making them investigate the presumptions and presuppositions, and the result is just like an aggressively counter revolutionary American politics that's based in feminism. Yeah, and I did a piece on how like bell hooks is a problem. So yeah, I mean I've said before that like white liberal women, white feminists are the worst parents in the United States. Just let the kids do what they want. No, that's ridiculous. That's absurd. You just don't want to be a parent and you don't want to take responsibility for being a parent. They're horrible. So liberals are bad parents. Feminism doesn't help that. And what about black feminists? Well, it's just the it's just liberal feminism on with blackface. Like anytime you naturalize morality where you don't have to think, but you just kind of know because of your experience, and you don't have to actually think, and you don't have to active discipline. You're like, and that's what feminists is telling women. They're morally superior because they're women. They're competent because they're women. Anybody who's telling women that they're enough because they're women is like an enemy to me. Nobody is enough. Is there such a thing as non-liberal feminism? I don't know. Well, I think that's like decolonialism, like Winter, Sophia Winter. Yeah. Okay. So there is the case that American feminism started during slavery and was actually a strategy to legitimize cops, right? So when women are stuck in the house, white men are protectors of the house and they shoot black people on the house. But that's okay because black people are not free in society. When black people become free in society, you need a police presence in society to police black people, and you need to legitimize the policing of black people. And you know what's very handy with that? Feminism, because then that gets women outside into society, white women outside into society to be protected from black people. Now you've legitimized a policing institution for black men, which was always like the purpose. So feminism and the policing of black men, they go hand in hand in a way. Define white. I mean, it's not about melanin. It's about the relationship to colonialism. Like Irish and all Slavics, they weren't white until they came to America and decided and like appreciated the status position. So, and that's the same with black. It's about colonialism. All right, so do you have anything good to say or should I cut off? I feel like this is a pretty long stream. Past midnight. I'm answering all the questions, giving the people what they want. All right. I've always been curious about this. Do you teach your kids from an African-centered perspective, meaning highlighting the achievements of black people throughout history? That is what Dame Dash asks. That is a shitty perspective in history. Like, all right, so that's a respectability politics perspective of an African-centered perspective. I teach my kids from like in a philosophically rich perspective. What I don't do is paper over the perfidy of the whites and the cultural degradation of the whites. Like this idea that highlighting what black people did. Well, you know, black people did this. And black people did this. The first blank and blank was actually a black person. That doesn't help. That doesn't help. That doesn't help explain to kids why all of the gifted and talented kids are like white girls. That doesn't help. What does help, what I do explain to kids and go out, is like the perfidy of white supremacy in America and how that bleeds over to economic life and why a lot of their black friends are broke and don't have stuff and why their white friends are basic but yet have stuff because their families are not broke. So this idea that like the black-centered education just highlights all the great black people in America, I think confuses the issue. I do a talk about great black people in America, but I think the more important aspect of a black-centered education is telling people the truth about America. Like me and my 10-year-old, we started when she was 11. We're reading together Mercer Baratheron's The Color of Money. And we're working through just paragraph by paragraph. And that is the quality of education my kids get in this household. For the Chinese breath be kicking. I don't understand. All right, tax. All right, thanks for all you do, sir. Let's talk DNA. That's real science. God. All right, so it's not about melanin. It's about lineage. Gina Murray is absolutely right. Being black in America is not about melanin. It's about lineage. It's about lineage. John McWhorter and Stokely Carmichael didn't do a darn thing and doesn't understand said why he's celebrated. So I think John McWhorter is a whole problem. I do not like him. I have more respect for Glenn Lowry. I think there's more of a searching aspect to Glenn Lowry and a more kind of self-reflective aspect to Glenn Lowry. John McWhorter, I think, is useless. By the way, another guy with a screwed up family. But I think, probably not particularly particularly smart. Army, here's my personal offer to you to debate you publicly on live here, YouTube, February 1st, 2025. Why would I debate you? Who are you? I would like to have a spell off against you. You can probably spell better than I can. I didn't learn how to spell very well. My kids outstrip me in all the things. I work with them in the way that my parents didn't work with me. So I don't know who you are or why you're relevant, VT. But if you have questions, I'll answer them. Now, I agree with that. John is not one of my favorite. Yeah, John, Michael Eric Dyson, the two sides of the kind of same, the useless Negroes. Useless. I do not like it. I do not like it. I think the various reasons are where policy can help a lot. So I don't know. All right, so thank you for your time. I'm going to cut out, try to get some Z's, write a few more sentences about why no-fault divorce is a form of child abuse, which is the book I'm working on. And I'll talk to you at a different time. Peace. Where's the button? And if you appreciate what I'm doing, go to www.funkyacademic.com. Kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month.